Call this meeting of the Magnolia Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and the notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. So, Ms. Hinkle, anybody sign to speak?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think this is the Dr. Garza show, so you're up.
All right, good deal. Okay, well, hey, good evening.
Yeah, I just want to say something by way of introduction. So I think it's really important that we spend time looking at how the state, judges and rates our schools in academics. The academics are extremely important. That is our core business, is how we educate kids. And the whole goal of this thing is that kids learn. So this is the first time in the last 3 accountability cycles that we have received data from the state and accountability ratings in a timely manner. The previous 2 cycles have been held up by litigation, and so we didn't get that academic information until so far after the fact that it kind of lost its relevance. It's one of the reasons we thought it was really important to spend time with you tonight going over it. So what I've asked Dr. Garza to do is to kind of treat you guys like he does us when he goes over all this with us and explains it to us. Like, have this be kind of a working session where he goes report to report and explains to you and kind of bores down into why did this number end up here and what's hiding behind all the math. So he's going to do a little overview of how it all works and how complicated it is, and then get into the specifics, but feel free to ask questions. And you guys are in the capable hands of Brandon Garza. So Dr. Garza, you're up, sir.
Good deal. Well, he stole a little of my thunder, so
That's kind of how this works.
that's plugged in, got it. So yeah, like you said, we haven't done this in 3 years. So I'm trying to think, who was here in September 22 as a board member? I know you were. Was it just y'all two? Yeah, I think Ms. Eagle. And that's it. Yeah. So we haven't done this in a while because, like you said, there's been litigation. It's just been kind of a mess. So we just got some results. We just got 2023 results back in April. And by that time, that stuff's 2 years old. The high school stuff's 3 years old. I mean, so that's totally irrelevant to us. We got 2024 results just a couple weeks ago. The same day we got 2025 results. So that's kind of, so we're just kind of starting from scratch with all this data just dumped on us and, okay, well, where are we, right? So back in 2022 was, we received an A rating from TEA, if you recall that. That was the last year of what they call the old system. They changed the accountability system the following year. And so when they did that, the following year they gave us a what-if report. They said, here is last year's data that you got an A on, which we were 91. Here's last year's data, but here's in the new system. Well, that 91 became an 85. All right, so that's a good benchmark for us to know that A in 2022 actually was an 85 on the new system. And they didn't really change the core components of the system. What they did is they changed the calculation methods. They allowed backdoor math that
So I remember years ago talking to Anita Hebert about this, because it's like, it kept moving, it's always keep moving.
Yeah.
But it would seem that even though it's old, you could get some nuggets, to some warts or kudos or whatever. I mean, it seemed like you could get something beneficial even out of old data.
You can. And one of the best things we ever saw is it gives us trend data. Dr. Bullock sent y'all some information, I think last week, that showed like some 4-year trend. That's very valuable to see, okay, where were we 4 years ago? Where are our neighbors 4 years ago? All that kind of stuff. So that's very helpful to us. Okay, so I'm gonna give y'all a pretty brief overview of the system in very broad terms, and then we're gonna drill down into each domain. And I'll show y'all some relevant data points within that domain, each domain. So there are 3 domains in the system. The first, domain 1, is student achievement, and that deals primarily with how our students perform on the STAR test and how our high schools do on college, career, and military readiness. That is the most basic of all domains. Domain 1, that is by far the easiest one to ascertain. School progress is, there are 2 parts. There's 2A and 2B. 2A is called academic growth, and that's how students progress from year to year on math and reading assessments throughout the system. All right. So for example, not a second grade STAR test, thankfully. So there is not a growth measure in third grade, but they get in fourth grade. It goes all the way up until they finish all their Algebra 1 EOC and English 1, or English 2 EOCs. All right, so that's 2A. 2B is called relative performance. And what that is your, go back to domain 1, that's your student achievement score in relation to your economic disadvantage rate of your students. All right, so what the state basically says is the more eco-dis students you should have, the less performance you have to be successful. All right, it's inverse, right? The least you have, the more you should be successful. Closing the gaps is domain 3, and I will summarize that paragraph. Basically, that's just how all of our subpopulations do in relation to certain targets that the state sets.
Brenda, what's the subpopulation?
African American, Hispanic, EB,
Economically disadvantaged,
yeah, white.
emerging bilingual, so Spanish speaking, all that stuff.
So we'll go through all these at a pretty deep level as we go over.
So this seems like growth, like in other words, so fourth grade, then you look at fifth grade to know how well they advanced because they were fourth grade last year.
Yeah, correct. So we're looking at two different things. So whenever we show you all STAR results, and I'll say, hey, we made a 5-point gain. Well, that's from year to year. That cohort of kids may not have made a 5-point gain, but from year to year we made a 5-point gain. So the state's looking at that, but they also want each kid in the cohort to also make gains academically, and that is a big marker for us. Okay. So to get a score, what they do is there's a student achievement again in domain 1, school progress, 2A, 2B. You get 3 different scores for those domains. They take the best of those scores, and that is 70% of your accountability. All right. And so I'll show you here in just a minute how that works. And the other 30% is your closing the gap score. So we get a domain score for domain 1, 2A, 2B, and 3, and then all those scores kind of come together to make all our overall score. All right.
So I think it's important to note that one of the reasons that the closing the gaps always counts in your accountability, they take the higher of the 3 in the first on the student achievement and school progress side, but the reason the closing the gaps is hugely important to the state that school districts work to bring up historically underperforming subpopulations.
Yeah, it's also a requirement of the federal government too, though.
Yeah,
So
and
that's the part of things are students assistance.
Yeah, so this comes federal all the way down, the emphasis on making sure you're not looking past a child. And so you will always see some sort of, subpopulation closing the gap kind of thing front and center in accountability model.
So, all right, so we now get into some of the domains. So this is domain 1, and this is just very, very basic, just how it works. So y'all know whenever a kid takes a STAR test, they can either not pass, they can get approaches, meets, or masters. Okay? That's been around for quite a while. So if a student scores masters, they also count for us in the needs category and the approaches category. So we get 3 different checks for them. All right. So that's why a lot of times you'll see the highest score for a school is always the approaches, because that's all the kids that pass. Your meets and masters kids are there as well. So then that's why that approaches number is always the largest, and your next slide high is going to be your meets, because your meets has the meets kids and the masters kids, and then the masters kids are themselves. All right.
So like this probably isn't fair, and you may frown at this, but just go with me for a second. So in a simple way, like your approaches is just your pass rate, right? That's the kids that you passed. That's great. It's almost like the meets becomes not only did you pass, but you made a B, and the masters, not only did you pass, but you made an A.
Correct. That's it.
I mean, in some overly simplistic way.
So we're in domain 1 still, so that, like I said, deals a lot with STAR and also CCMR. CCMR is huge for our high schools. And they are evaluated on the number of seniors that graduate achieving the college career military readiness indicator. They can get that in a myriad of ways, all listed above. So passing an your IB test, they can get a certain score on the SAT, ACT, or the TSI. If they take a dual credit course in math or English and earn credit, get an IBC, so like a welding certificate or an auto certificate, that helps us out for them being CCMR. Or they take a college prep course or a UT organics course. So there's a litany of ways to get that. And so what we do is, start their freshman year, we start tracking kids and say who has a check and who doesn't. And so if y'all, do you have a senior this year?
I do.
Okay, yeah, so part of her early release is that she has to have that in place, or be on track to get one. Yeah, that's part of the vehicle.
Or you don't get the early release.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. So that's a big carrot for the students, they like that, yeah. Okay, any questions on that?
I just want kids to do anything about early release and later on.
Correct.
Everything we're doing.
CTE, yes, CTE, yeah. So, for example, last year, we had 33% of our students for the class of 2024. Remember, CCMR is a lagging indicator, so this is from the previous school year. But we had a third of those kids get a certification, which is fantastic. That's great. Okay, so we're still in domain one.
So 1 second, back up to one thing, Brandon. Talk to them about lagging indicators and how many of the things we have to watch are, the hay's already in the barn because it's from a previous year, it's not even this year's.
I'm gonna get to that at the high school. Okay, I'll get one, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Because I have a chart.
Yes.
All right, so for domain one, for all of our elementary, junior high, and intermediate schools, that is strictly just their STAR scores. That's it. All right, so it's 100% based on STAR performance. So the state takes your percentage of approaches, plus your percentage of meets, plus your percentage of masters, add that up, and they divide by 3, and that's your score. All right. So I want to show you an example here. This is Audubon. New campus, A campus, by the way, highest rating in the district, by the way, 92. So you'll see here that their student achievement score was an 89. All right. Their school progress was a 94, and their relative performance was an 82. So the highest of those 3 is a 94. That's their 0.7. All right. And then they had the guy score, which is here. So when we look at their academic achievement in domain 1, how those scores come about is they take, they were 82% of their kids were approaches, 62 were meets, and 32% were masters. All that adds up to 176. Right? They then take that score and divide it by 3, which gives you a 59. Which doesn't sound great, however, there is a scaling, this is getting really easy for y'all, you can see what we're dealing with a little bit. They have a formula that they put things in, they have cut scores and all these things. So, for elementaries to get A in domain 1, they have to get a 60 for a component score. Well, Audubon got a 59, that equates to 89 because they have this formula here. It's not easy on the eyes. Yeah, it takes a minute to go through that because you got to use different cut scores and stuff, but that's how they get that. They used to have this great thing on TA, which was a scaling tool. You just put the number in, it did it for you. They stopped doing that for some reason, so now we do this by hand. Unless we have an eye, it's unfortunate. But that's where that score comes from. So that 59, when they put it into the formula, actually became 89 for Audubon.
You don't have a fancy good day, boys.
No, we do not yet. Unfortunately, we probably should have one though.
Yes, we should.
All right. So, does that make sense for y'all for domain 1? So all of our K through 8 schools have the same calculations. Approach and meets and masters, divide by 3. That's it. All right. Now, for the high schools, it gets a little more complicated. They have, for their domain 1, 40% comes from their STAR performance. 40% comes from CCMR. We just went through that without all that entails. And then 20% is their graduation rate. So this is MHS, and you can see their calculations there. Their domain 1 score actually was a 90. And so they got an A in this domain. You see that their CCMR rate was very high, 94, that's fantastic. STAR was 89. Honestly, for MHS's clientele, they should be higher than that. They should. And the graduation rate was 85. So I want to show you.
Not 85% graduation
No,
rate, 85
that's their
on the
score.
scale.
Yeah, I'll show you that.
On
And
some calculations.
Yeah, and the margins for graduation rate are exceptionally slim. Let's take it just a second. So this is their graduation rate. And what this thing does is they take the 4, 5, or 6-year graduation rate, and you get the highest of that score. So their highest was 97.3% of the students in the class of 2023 graduated, right?
And so this is 2023 graduation rate counting in your 2025 accountability.
Correct. Correct.
So kind of your lagging indicator.
Yeah. So you can see here that how slim the margins are. So we're going to look at this first table here is the class of 2024. So So they are accountable for 502 students in that cohort of kids. And they graduated 486. I mean, that means they lost 16 students along the way. That's very slim. And that's basically averaging 4 students a year. And so right now, what you're seeing at the high schools is they are dealing with hundreds of no-shows. Of kids that go to different schools, kids return to Mexico, return to home country. That's very common. For whatever reason, people withdraw, and so we try to code them and make sure that we have codes in them so that we can make sure that code that goes into this system, they count as not count against us. That's part of the process. So the high schools are constantly chasing this information, and you see they're chasing it for several years after kids graduate. It's a revolving door of information with the high schools. But like I said, you know, even for the 5-year rate, 13 students over 4 years, that's a pretty small margin of students that actually drop out.
So where does the 85 come from, and what's
So,
the max?
The state, the 85 comes from here, back to our accountability manual. And where is that? There. So this is the graduation rate. So we were at 97.3 for MHS. And that equates, that's this bar right here, and that equates to an 85.
On the scale.
Scales.
Wow, so like you said, it's skin.
It is, like, so like, if we were able to find, I think, 2 more graduates, then we'd probably up to a 9. It is razor tight. But it gets very difficult to find these kids, find them, and then say, hey, come back and get a diploma. That gets very challenging. And most of them already have, you know.
So, Dr. Garza, how does that affect, like, say you're talking about Magnolia High School and their graduation rate? If a student falls behind on credits and then ends up transferring to the Todd Stevens Academy and graduates from there?
So then they come off MHS's role and they go to the Stevens Academy role. If you look at here, Stevens Academy is a AA, which is a different type of school. And you see their margins are a little bit friendlier.
Because it's designed as
It's
a
designed as a job
recovery
application
program.
school.
Mhm.
So they can kind of take some of those blemishes, so to speak, without, as opposed to more comprehensive schools.
So a 6% difference in graduation means from 65 to 95, 30 points.
Yeah, I want to say the graduation rate for the state's like in the high 80s. You can see that they would be, right here. The margins are very small when it comes to stuff.
In the last 3 years, all counted, but this year's scores?
Right.
You get the highest, yeah. So if you go back to that picture. So here's MHS. So actually, they'll, I don't have last year's information yet because it's not complete. But this 97.3 will carry as the highest score for one more year at least, right? So next year they'll at minimum be an 85 again, hopefully up to a 90. So it just kind of depends on how the class of 2025 did. So we're still getting that information now. We get summer graduates and there's kids finishing credits and all kinds of stuff. So that stuff kind of trickles in at times. Any more questions on that?
So it's probably premature to ask this, but there's actionable, you can drill down to results that produce actionable things to go do to fix stuff.
Oh,
right?
sure. Oh, yeah.
I mean, because graduation rate, okay, let's figure out how we can get that, I mean, it's so thin.
It's very thin, like I said, I mean, so they're looking for 16 students from the class of 2024. All right. So that's domain 1. That's how that's calculated. Any more questions on that? All right, go to domain 2. So remember I said earlier, there are 2 parts to domain 2. There's the academic growth, which is domain 2A, and there's adult performance, which is domain 2B. So 2A just deals with how many students are growing from year to year in math or reading assessments in the district. And 2B is how schools are doing their domain 1 score in correlation to their economic disadvantage rate. All right? We'll go through each one of these. So this is where it starts to get a little more complicated. So this is student growth. This is what we call the growth chart. And what the state does, I'll try to explain this as best I can. I mentioned earlier that there are, there's approaches meets and masters. There's also not passing. Well, in terms of growth, they have more categories. They have, you can And so what they do, and I'll use fourth grade math as an example, all right? So every math and reading test has different cut scores for passing. So let's say it might be 20, get 20 questions right for fourth grade math, and it might be 25 for fifth grade math. It just depends on how the state, we have no control over that. We're just kind of subject to what the state tells us. They will then set those scores according to those initial passing standards, right? So for simple math, we'll say, as an example, let's say this high does not meet was getting 10 questions right. So if a student was low did not meet in the previous year third grade math test, but they got 10 questions right in fourth grade math test, they didn't pass, but they're giving us a growth point. So they're showing that they made academic growth. Because some kids, they will perform poorly in 1 year. It's hard to go from like a raw score of 5 to passing. That is very, that's very challenging for students. But can they make growth? And the idea is that they make growth in a year, that maybe 2-3 years from now, they are going to pass that test. Because, you might have some students that are dyslexic, that it's very hard for them to do the test, things like that. So it's hard for them to do the test. But the idea is that they're on the trajectory to pass the test down the road. That's the idea at first. All right. So I'm going to show you an example here. This is Nickel Sawmill. Another one of our A campuses. We had 7 A campuses. Sawmill was one of them. Did a good job. So here's their domains again. Their star performance. Domain 1 was an 86. Their school progress, which is academic growth, was a 92. And their local performance was an 83. So the highest score they got was at 92, and that's their 0.7. So we'll look at how did they get there on their growth. There's another chart. And so, elementary, the numbers are small, so they're volatile, right? They can escalate quickly or they can de-escalate quickly because, every kid's like a percentage problems. High school, it takes 5-10 kids to start moving the needle. This is like one kid, it can move it tremendously. Right? And so, you'll see here that there were 260 total tests evaluated, and we had 208 growth points. We got some bonus points. I'll get that in just a minute what that is. So we have 215 points total divided by this number, and that's your 83. All right. But it's that awesome formula I showed you earlier. That same formula comes back to play again. Same thing. That comes back into play, and so that 83 became a 92 in your scale score. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's how it looks in practice. Here's RLA. All right. So over here, you see the 20, 23, 24 star performance. So this is the kids' third grade star test in reading, and this is their fourth grade star test up here. So we had 8 students that were low did not meet in third grade that stayed low did not meet. We had 2 students go from low did not meet to high did not meet. We had 4 go from low did not meet to passing. We had 2 more go to high present. We had 2 go to meets. That's fantastic. Right? So and then you can see, for each one. In certain areas, they give you half points. So if you're high did not meet in third grade, you get high did not meet again, then the score gets a half point. So we had a couple of those students here. The same concept is here available for low approaches. Same thing here, so you have points. So basically, you can see all these points are added up over here to the side, and that's your total. What is very interesting to see is that Nickel Sawmill did a very good job of their meets kids right here. They had 36 kids score meets in third grade, 34 of them scored meets or higher the following year. So they lost 2. So here are the 2 right here. Those 2 went to high approaches. That might have been a question or 2. Typically is, right? That's how that works. They had 30 master's kids in third grade, and then 26 of them scored master's again. That's fantastic. So they lost 4 of them, all to the meets category. Right? Every now and then you'll see a student that goes from like masters to low approaches, and after looking at that, usually that has to do like they didn't write the essay or something like that. It's something kind of wonky, but that is super rare. So you don't see massive jumps in students, but what you do see is trying to like get the kids just one more level up. Usually that's what we're trying to do throughout the process. All right, and then down here.
Brandon, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you're making the presumption that the 4 kids from last year that were masters, there's 30 for that count number, is what you're saying?
We had 30 students in third grade reading that were masters. 26 of them were masters again. 4 of them went to the next level.
And we know that those are the 4 because they're in the count category?
Correct, yeah, so this is their third grade performance here on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
This top part is their fourth grade performance. So there's 30 kids total that were masters in third grade that we are accountable for. 26 of them scored masters again, 4 of them scored meets.
Because they're identified as test takers again this year.
Correct. Yeah, and so to be a test taker that we are accountable for, you have to be here, be enrolled.
For growth.
Well, for just in general, just like that we are accountable for when it comes to the system. You gotta be here on snapshot day, which is the last Friday in October, and you're on test day. If you're here on those 2 days, then you count. If you're not, then you don't.
So how do you, does that somehow provide a way to keep up with the changes from one year to the next? Is it relative?
Well, the
Third
state,
grade went to fourth, and then all of a sudden the class makeup changes.
yeah, I mean, the state has to have a way to track who's accountable for schools, and it's not fair to, for a student to enroll in March and say, okay, well, they're got yours, and vice versa for a student to,
Sure.
leave in August and say that they're still ours. So that, they set that date, that snapshot date is critical not only for accountability, but there's a lot of teams reporting there, funding is associated with that as well. I mean,
UIL size.
yeah, that's a big deal for just school in general, snapshot date, so there's multiple things coming out of that.
But when you track, excuse me, when you track this, these are specific students that have names and faces.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning fourth grade looks different than when they get to fifth, because some people moved and some people came in, right?
Correct.
So when you track this, it's gotta have a name and a face to it, otherwise
does.
it's just a blend of
Yeah, and
a different group of people.
so, like, for example, this year when we had the intermediate open, the kids just went everywhere, right? So that gets a little challenging for this MPI next door, because they're getting all these brand new kids that are new to their school, and trying to figure out, okay, what's their data from last year? Now, we have systems in place for that clearly, but it does make it a little bit challenging, for sure.
So if you have, say, a move in from, say, another district, they are not on here, or they
No,
are?
yeah, if they're here on snapshot, they count for us, regardless of whether they went to school last year. Doesn't matter, they count for us. So they could have been at any district, it doesn't matter. Okay. I have seen.
If they took the test last year.
Yeah, well, true, yeah,
If they came from somewhere that didn't, then they're not in this component, right?
yes, correct.
Because there's no way to measure growth.
Yeah, so like, for example, if a kid, and Sawmill was fourth grade this year, but last year went to a private school, then they would not count, because there's no growth for that student, because they did not take a STAR test.
Should if they go to another public school somewhere
Correct.
else, we track that.
Correct, yes. And I actually have seen it once in my career where a student withdrew the day after snapshot and enrolled back in the day of testing. They were gone for like 6 months, and they counted for that school. That's just the way the game's played. It was unfortunate. He did not do well. So he was not in school for 6 months. He came back just in time for that. Down here we have our accelerated learning points. So this is where you get bonus points. So these are students that did not pass in third grade. And so there's House Bill 1416. We are required by law to provide intervention for them. And so when those students pass the STAR test, we actually get bonus points for them. So you'll see here that there was 31 of them from the previous year that we were accountable for. 17 of them passed. All right, so we get a quarter point for every one of those. So 17 times 0.25, that's 4 1/4. And that 4 1/4 gets added to this 107. That is your RLA growth. The math is the same thing, same thing. So obviously the secondary gets a little more complicated because you're dealing with multiple grade levels. But for elementary, it's rather simple. It's just 4th grade. Any questions on that? Okay, so moving on to, this is domain 2B. I mentioned earlier, this is about how your student achievement is in domain 1, that number, in correlation to economic disadvantage rate of your students. And so like I said, campuses with fewer economic disadvantaged students on average has higher levels of achievement, and that's just the state average. And campuses with more equidistant students has less achievement. And so they put you kind of on a sliding scale of obviously the more you hear, the lower your achievement has to be. So then they have, the state provides some quantifiable bands here, and it kind of depends on where you fall in that band. So as an example, I'll show you MIS. So MIS, their domain one score, student achievement again, this is kids passing the STAR test. They were at 53, remember, that's their component score, not the scale score, that was an 84. Their economic disadvantage rate is 56.5%, okay, that's high. Which is that's higher than the district average, by the way. We're 46.8, we're 46.8. So their domain 2B score was an 87. Let me show you how that comes. So what the state does here is they have another chart. There's lots of charts in here. And here it is right here. So you find your eco dish rate on the left-hand side, and these are the scores you have to have. So you can see that a school that has 0 to 5% economic disadvantaged students, so think like Friendswood or the Woodlands or something like that, they have to get an 86 component score to get an A. All right, where MIS, because their economic disadvantage rate, 6.5, they have to get a 56. So you can see on this one page alone that if MIS had, let's say, 51% eco-disc kids, they have to then get 58 to get an A. So you see that slide scale front center right there. So generally speaking, the more you have, the more difficult it is to have higher levels of achievement. So that's why it's kind of hard to compare us to like Tomball and things like that, because we're like totally different populations. It's just basically more challenging. Okay, does that make sense? And then, all right, the last domain is closing the gap. This one gets real muddy. I'll do my best here. Like I said earlier, this deals with how your subpopulations, so your African Americans, Hispanics, emerging bilingual students, how are they doing at certain markers set by the state? And there's different ways that they look at it. You'll see high school has different measures than our K-8 schools. But one thing I do want to point out is that our K-8 schools, again, the growth is massive. It's 50% of this domain. So growth is its own domain and half of this one. So growth for those K-8 schools is huge. Whereas you see in high schools, growth doesn't even count for that because they substitute graduation status and CC marks. So we're going to look at, here's how the groups are evaluated. Everybody has all students. Everybody has the high focus. High focus students, that is your EB, your special education, highly mobile, all put in one pot. And other than that, the state takes your two lowest performing subpopulations from the previous year. And lowest from the previous year. And you have to have 10 to count. Just 10. So our high schools, 10 kids can dramatically impact their accountability if it's just 10. Even though there are thousands of children there, 10 kids. All right. So here's the targets that they set. But they give you points if you achieve certain targets. The targets are different for every minority group. I'm sorry, every subpop. And I'm going to show you Williams. This is going to be a little more real to you. All right, again, so here's Williams Elementary. They were at 89, just missed being an A. All right. Their student achievement was a 77. That's a domain 1 that's kids passing the test. Their school progress was a 90. They did excellent growth this past year, and that was their highest score of 3 domains. And their closing the gaps was an 88, also very good. All right. So they're closing the gaps. You'll see. So they were 89. Actually, they were 89.4. They just missed it. Yeah, barely. They just missed it. So here's their closing the gaps report. You see the different weights and stuff, but I'll just show you here. So this is called academic achievement status. This is kids passing the reading and math test at the NEETS level. And so you see the target. So for all students, Williams has to have 55% of their students to get a 3. Well, they got 53%. However, there's another formula that the state uses. This one that says, and your current year rate versus last year's rate, greater than, less than, so forth and so on. And if you can get points that way. So 2 points African American, and that's generally speaking, that's actually pretty good. 3 points Hispanic, 3 points high focus. All right, so they got 12 points here, and but down here they only got 6. All right, so that's 18 of 32 areas, and that equates to up to here. 18 of 32, that's at 56%. That times the weight gives us 60.9 points. Got bottom in there? All right. Now here's where it gets a little bit unfortunate. You look at here, in this category, African American math, they had 30% of their kids achieve the meets level. The target was 33. If one more student gets that, they become 40%. That 40% gives them a 1 here, which gives them a 19 here, which gives them a 59 here, which gives them a 75 here. That's becoming an A. So the point is, it is razor thin in some of these markets. They can help you. I mean, we got some camps that just made being an A by a couple of kids, but you see how they really missed it by 1 student.
So, Brandon, go back down to that pot for a second. And the other thing I want you to notice is, in looking at that second column, 2025 total number of tests, be adjusted, and look in the African American column, the number you see there, what do you guys see? 2025 total tests adjusted, it's under the points earned section. Brandon, can you highlight that?
10.
Yeah, it's a 10. And remember what we said? It takes 10 kids to make a subpopulation that counts in your accountability. So if one more kid had passed, they're an A. If one kid hadn't been here, then the other 9 kids aren't figured into your accountability. I mean, you're still focused on you want all kids to learn, but the theory is that group gets so small that one kid swings the margin so large because you're talking about a small population, you know? So that's one that really kind of shows you some of the wonkiness of the system to kind of understand.
I mean, if it was my system, it would be like a percentage. I mean, 10 is a pretty low bar to hit. I mean, when you're dealing with, I think they had,
And one passer is 10%, you know, I mean, so it just,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal. So, you can see on here, same concept. You'll notice that here, the African American math does not count because this is growth. Remember, growth only in 4th grade. So they had 10 between 3rd and 4th grade for the top category, but not 10 in 4th grade for growth. So therefore, it doesn't count. So it gets real. It gets very interesting about how that works. Right? And there's also ELP status. That's how kids are doing on TELPAS. So our second grade.
Tell them what TELPAS is.
It's our basically how our EB students are progressing in the English language.
These students are
Emerging language. But yeah, grades 2 through 12 take a TELPAS, and so that's part of this as well. That's 10%, and that last part is basically kind of your student achievement again, and back to this. So that is the domains.
So Dr. Williams, overall, what percentage of the kids passed?
The test.
Because we saw only 3 out of 10 in the African American category. What's the total percent?
If you went to the STAR performance, they had 78% of their students passed that test.
22% that don't pass, they'll be promoted to the next grade. What's the parents hold them back? How does that count?
parent, yes, sir.
How do they get?
Their policy speaks to that. Sarah can speak to that.
Yeah, there's a process for retention at the end of every year.
Yeah, no, but if the parents hold them back, then does it affect how we're scoring the star?
No, they would take the STAR test again, but they would not count for growth because they would take the same test over again. But
They do count for achievement.
They would take, yeah, they would count for achievement. Okay, so this is how we did as a district. You'll see we were at 86. I've highlighted the scores that count for each of the campuses. So, you know, I was at the top, so this was their highest, was 94, that was their 0.7. Everybody's domain 3 counts. You'll see Bear Branches, their highest was domain 1, which is student achievement. That was highest, that was 92. You'll see Bear Branch Intermediate, their highest was domain 1, 86, and so forth and so on. And so how the district is scored,
Before you go to that, can you talk for just a second about comparison groups and relative performance?
I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
I've slacked that. So, but overall, we had 7 A's, 7 B's, and 2 C's. In our 2 C's were Manila Elementary, Manila Parkway Vista Bike Kid as well. And we've identified kind of what the issues are there, very fixable, and we're pretty confident they'll be just fine.
And Williams makes a lot of kids.
Correct. So to get this 86 up here, right, we get a domain score for every domain the district does. The district score is a culmination of all the campus scores put together. And so that's how they do it. So here's a domain 1 calculation example. So they weight the schools, right? And they take how many students are in grades 3 through 12 for the entire district, and that's your accountability group. And then I think it was like 12,000 or something like that. Audubon had 196 kids that were test takers in grade 3 and 4. So the Audubon's weight the district 1.7%. That's it. So this is domain 1. So they're 89 times 1.7 give the district 1.513 points. You do that all the way down. You'll see how much the high schools count. Massive amount. I think all the elementaries combined, I think might equal a high school, maybe. Or almost does. But the high schools obviously count a tremendous amount. So you see West gave us 18.423 points. The Stevens Academy gave us half a point. So all that adds up to an 86. And so they do the same thing for domain 2A, 2B, and close to the gaps. That's how the scores derive. Any questions on that? And then I think Dr. Wilkes can tell us some information. This is just how we did versus our neighbor districts. You'll see right there behind Montgomery, Bob Point. Dallas-Fort Conroe that's always usually a positive. But yeah, more importantly, like to us, is okay, how are we doing versus districts that look like us? Because like I said, Tom Montgomery don't really look like us. So this is some like districts that we found. We're trying to find some more that look, but this is similar to enrollment, similar economic disadvantaged population, similar sped rates, similar bilingual rates. So you'll see on this list, we have to be one at the top. But again, it kind of goes back to that sliding scale, of the more challenging the population is, the more it's hard, the more difficult it is to get those scores. Dr. Bullock mentioned just a minute ago about comparative groups. So what TEA does is they place schools in comparative groups. And if you finish, and there's different areas for each school, but if you finish in the top 10 in certain categories of these comparative groups, then you get what they call a distinction.
Right, so a comparative group, what they'll do is that they will take your kind of leading indicators as far as your, okay, well, there you go. The share size, hiring rate, that kind of deal, but they rank order it, like it starts with population, then it goes to the next one, you're closest out of those in, and then the next one, they go through this process until they build a cohort of 40 schools that is uniquely matched to each school. Like you could be in the same comparison group, like we could be in the same comparison group at College Station, high school, like Mag High could be, or West, but then their comparison group looks different.
Everybody,
because it pulls based off of their numbers. There will be some overlap, but it's uniquely designed to as closely match as possible 40 schools that look like you. So that then you're like, you start with, how do our kids do, we want kids learning, we want kids to pass, then you get to, from this, yeah, I get all that, but are we outperforming the folks that have populations similar to us? Or are we not? Are we in the top quartile of that group, or are we in the bottom quartile of that group? If I'm making sense.
Yeah, and so here's line. The line got 5 distinctions. That's the most you can possibly get. It's fantastic. And so you'll see that they were in quartile 1. They have, I think, 11 indicators. There's 10 here. There's also 2 more that are listed. A campus, which is fantastic. I mean, that's fantastic. The line of the A campus is just fantastic. And in 2024, they were 88. So, talking to Aaron, Phantom, the principal, like, hey, Aaron, this is 2 years in a row of sustained success. They got 5 distinctions in 2024 also. So their processes are working with that. I know that's kind of personal to you, but.
I'm trying hard to keep my cool over here, but.
But you'll see that they were in quartile 1 in almost fantastic. We couldn't ask much more out of line, honestly.
Mhm.
We really could. It's just fantastic, right? So that's line, but he mentioned something earlier about the high schools and what they're dealing with. So elementaries have 11 areas generally, high schools have 36. And so you'll see on here, there's 36 indicators for distinctions, only 13 are for current year. 23 are from the previous year. So as an example, Mr. Albrecht, who just assumed the role of MHS principal, a lot of his distinctions, most of them are from a year he wasn't even there, for better or for worse. So he might be great, it might not, but that's out of his control at this point. That is done. That's a class of 20. Those kids graduated, and so he's not, he can do nothing about that. So this is West, and you can see that they had I think they had 10 Q1s, which is pretty good. But like I said, most of the stuff is from the previous year, and there is a ton of information on here.
And how do you differentiate between, let's see, 5 for ACT, SAT, where there's a certain separation there between participation and scoring, and then there's also a separation where we have all these college test exams in math, where we're Q1, but when we look at the math overall, or in Q3 and Q2, what's the separation there? Is it in Gen Pop, or just really boring, but in kids that are deciding they're going to college, they're pretty good?
Well, so if you look, so on here you see SAT, ACT participation, so we're 4.4. That means that not tons of kids are taking SATs, which means our top 10 takers are, right? Which hence you see SAT score about.
Does that skew those Q1
Yeah,
results then?
right. Everybody's taking the test scores.
So if we got everybody to take the test, that would drop.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's just natural to happen. I mean the goal, if you can get everybody taking the test and you're still in Q1, yeah, that'd be fantastic. That's gonna be very challenging to do that with the population, but if you think it's doable, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
But
just curious.
so that's high school one. Every campus, I mean every level has different levels of indicators, and so we had 26 distinctions overall. You see Lion got 5 out of 5, Smith got 5 out of 5. Smith is the same thing as Lion. We could not ask much more out of Smith. They are an A campus year in, year out. They are a Title I school, just like Lion. And they have very fantastic process in place over there.
What's your term, they get it done?
They get it done at a very high
I
level.
noted we're on the same lines that math was also an area where we struggled, because maybe one area where that school struggled. Wonder if that's some point to curriculum in math, that top to bottom in all these schools, we'll see that we're below standard for second, third, fourth quartile in math.
So the Q3 you're talking about, right here, this quartile 3 for math?
Yes.
Yeah, that's for students that didn't pass the previous year. That's accelerated learning. That's not math.
That's not advanced, that's
No.
intermediate.
Accelerated learning is the bonus points for the kids that did not pass the previous year. So,
The master's performance, master's grade level Q2.
yeah, so like the third grade rating,
Yeah,
the
it's
Q1.
pedestrian, right? So, I mean, I'm just, like where we said, we're doing as good as we can. This is a school that, is this Lions again, or is this district, football district? Yeah, so this is Lions, where they're excellent at everything, but they're Q2 in math. What's driving that? Is it curriculum? I would question that it might be. When's the last time we had math tables as part of our curriculum? Addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division tables as part of our elementary school curriculum. I would suggest that's a key component to be good at math, regardless of what the state throws at us for tests. Hasn't been a part of our curriculum in the last 8 years. Something to think about.
Okay, and so, like William mentioned earlier, we're pleased with the results, but there's definitely areas to improve. There is a copious amount of data that you can go through. There are areas that we have to get better at. There's campuses that have to get better, for sure, absolutely, and they are aware of it. But there are just some district things that are could be a problem this coming year that I want y'all to be aware of. So, we had a pretty major shift this past year in the intermediate scheduling model. Y'all know that we went from an 8-period day to a 7-period day. The kids had 90 minutes of math reading every day. Well, we some budget constraints, and we wanted to make sure everybody got a raise this past year. So we had to shift to a 7-period day, which we had to unblock math and reading. So we're losing about 13 days of instruction from the previous year to this year. Now we kind of made some of that up with some, intervention classes that we have in place, but that's gonna hurt to some degree. There's no way around that. And we lost playing time at the intermediate junior high level. That's how we run our offense, so to speak, is, you know, we are depending on teachers working together, playing together, making lessons, making assessments, all that kind of stuff. That time has now been taken away. There are still things in place where they can still meet and plan. It's just not as easily available as it once was for them, so that's gonna be a challenge. Mr. Bell would tell you, our DOI teacher numbers continue to increase. DOI teachers are uncertified teachers. So about 14% of the teachers we have right now are currently uncertified. And
It is about to start going the other direction because recently out of the legislature, by 2930, Sam, I think, the District of Innovation Uncertified Teacher thing goes away. So every District of Innovation teacher that is here as a uncertified, these are all degree people, they just don't have a teaching certificate. We are, they are required to be on basically a plan that leads to certification by that 2930 date. And then that avenue of us hiring folks that are uncertified but degree, that window closes as of 2930.
the last thing is, and I think one thing y'all did this past year by giving us some very significant raises, I think what helped us is that our teacher experience level continues to kind of go in the wrong direction. And I think we're all professionals here. The more you do a job, the better you get at type deal. We have one of the lowest, least experienced teaching forces in the area. And so, over half our teachers have 5 years or less experience. So that's a challenge.
Over half.
It's over. I think, like the state average was like 11, and we were 9.5 as an average a couple years ago. So we'll see what they're doing this. Tom Ball's down with like 12, 13. It's just a different environment, unfortunately for us. But, but still, there might go our teaching forces, so we still have to, kids gotta learn. So we have to have things in place to make sure kids are learning, and that's what we're trying to do each and every day. There's things we can get better at for sure, but there's things that we're doing well.
I would suggest to us as a board that we challenge ourselves to find budget resource for District of Innovation teachers that succeed in their certification, because certification is not a free thing, and it takes a lot of time and effort and focus, and these teachers aren't making any money to begin with, and then we should figure out how to pay them back for their certification process. I know that, you can't put the horse back in the barn for all these people that already have a certificate, but for us that are hiring people as District of Innovation teachers, that we need to think about how to help them get to certified, and whether that means doing it with a carrot, where you pay them a quarter of the deal the first year, a quarter the second year they stay, and a quarter the third year they stay, and so forth, so that they stay for 3 or 4 years after they get the certificate. I don't know what the right solution is, but I think we need a solution there, because we have these people, we obviously saw something in them and thought they should be teachers in our district. So how do we keep them, and how do we make them better as teachers, and make them want to continue to be teachers, because being a teacher is hard. I think we know that. And then speaking to the first bullet up there, making sure in scheduling. First of all, speaking to block scheduling, I think it's too long anyway. I don't think it works for kids. I don't think they can stay focused that long on one subject. So I think that's a win for us. And another win for us could be to use our days leading into and out of all these breaks that we have, because we have a ridiculous number of week-long holiday breaks and 4-day weekends and 3-day weekends. Those need to be instructional days. They don't need to be special days and movie days and non-teaching days. They need to be from the administration, from this level and through the high schools. We need to be telling our administrators to make our teachers teach on those days and not have fun days. And we will recover every one of those days plus some, because I can guarantee you that we wasted 30-some education days on, it's a special day, it's the day before a break, it's the day after a break, it's a whatever, and our kids weren't learning last year. It's one of the reasons my kids aren't in the district.
Jane, you just said a lot, but I was just gonna leave alone on one thing you said in the beginning. I know that with our DOA, I think, or DY, District of Innovation, is, I think that our foundation has put in programs for trying to help in that area. I don't know what our district does specifically, but I know that there's a lot of applications that are available, and I think there's a lot of funds. So I think that's a good partnership, in helping with
That's
that.
awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that's promulgated to the teachers, right?
Even the ones that and Sarah can, she does elementary quite a bit. If if they stay with us, we're gonna be, they'll be just fine. If they got, if they can stay with us and year in, year out, and we're having to do things down in our processes, we show results. But the constant of losing half your team every year, I mean, like, a lot of our
Turnaround's tough.
are kind of starting from scratch. I mean, just imagine losing all your team every year. That you're kind of starting from scratch. You're going in, and learn the processes over and over again, learn the curriculum, learn this and that. That is the challenge. That is the challenge.
So, Mr. Michaels, I'll just say to your point also just about the teaching force, and especially the district of innovation teachers, and Dr. You're right. We put some things in place with MEF to help fund some of that. The other big initiative you're going to see starting out is this Para to Pro program, where we take paraprofessionals who have worked in the district and who want to get a degree and find a pathway for them to do that with scholarship money involved also, with them ultimately hoping to become certified teachers as well. One of the places we see that really helping us at some point is specifically in special education, because so much, in my mind, of especially in our programs of special ed is first you've got to have the heart for that and feel called to do it. And we have paras that are really great with kids there, that if we help them get a degree, could be really good certified sped teachers in some of those programs. And so, that's another pathway we're looking to work towards some of that. Final questions?
Final
thoughts?
questions?
I appreciate this very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You're all professionals now, you got it?
Can we get a copy of this?
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's quite the spreadsheet behind there, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot going on behind, we got spreadsheets galore and trying to get down to, how we got the resources and so forth and so on, but
You do a really good job of breaking it down. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
we're ready to go to the next item?
We need to adjourn.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn this workshop. Motion by Stacy, second by Jordan, all in favor? Meeting adjourned. Time 6:30.
Time for the